The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. We don't say this often, but there were few times Palpatine ever spat facts truer than this one quote from Episode 3. For millennia, dark side users dabbled in the dark arts and produced truly terrifying creatures, vile enough to freeze even the bravest Jedi's blood in their veins. These beasts were often collectively referred to as Sithspawn, and we've covered some of them in the past, such as the Techno Beasts, thought by some to be the most horrifying Sithspawn of all. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at what Sithspawn truly were, with a focus on one of the most well-known abominations, the fan-favorite Terentatek, a creature so fearsome, even the Wookiees feared it.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
To keep it simple, Sithspawn was the umbrella term used to refer to all horrifying abominations the Sith produced, one way or another. To quote Palpatine once again, "Although the Force can be used to create terrifying illusions, it is sometimes more satisfying to create actual creatures that are willing and eager to shred and devour one's enemies on command." This was achieved by using Sith alchemy to alter living beings until they were nothing more than a twisted mockery of their former selves. Sith didn't usually stop there, however. With the help of genetic engineering and the dark side, they refined their initial designs until their creations were as brutal, savage, and clever as they possibly could be. The stronger the creature, the more enemies it could maul. We've already talked about the Techno Beasts, but there were many others. The Masasai caste of the pure-blood Sith were actually genetically engineered to be stronger in the dark side. Palpatine himself created the chrysalid rancors. There were leviathans, smoke demons, battle hydras, and the one we'll be talking about today, the Terentatek, credited to Exar Kun, Lord of the Sith. Before we get into how these murder monsters came to be, however, let's take a look at what made them so terrifying. Undoubtedly, there are plenty of creatures in Star Wars that are absolutely horrifying. Some of these might have been affected by the dark side, like almost everything on Kashyyyk's lowest level, the Shadowlands, but most of these didn't qualify to be considered as dangerous as Sithspawn. Take the Wyshok, for example, the giant spiders that dwelt in Kashyyyk's aphotic depths. They were huge, scary, and definitely murderous, but they weren't on the same level as the Terentatek. Not by a long shot. The Terentatek were thought to have once been rancors, twisted beyond belief into the monstrosity they became. You've all seen rancors. They're already pretty scary to go up against, so just imagine an alchemically enhanced, buffed rancor. They were typically 4 times smaller than a full-grown rancor, but still considered gigantic, standing at about 3.2 meters tall from their toes to the tips of their enormous back spines. Their skin was leathery, either mottled brown or blue with yellow patches. Their eyes were dark, and honestly, let's just talk about their murder weapons. To start with, Terentatek had vicious claws at the ends of their powerful arms and legs, and 2 tusks on either side of their mouths, which were, of course, filled with sharp fangs. Not that they would need those. Their tusks were venomous, so that if they didn't manage to crush you or rip you to shreds with their brute strength, their venom would get to you. If that weren't enough, they were highly resistant to Force attacks, as were most creatures that fed on Force users, like the Vornskir of Mercia. By the time of the Cold War, a subspecies seemed to have evolved in the tombs of Korriban, known as the Terentatek Maulers. These were basically Terentatek on steroids, larger and more deadly. The rest of their species was scattered across the galaxy, from the caves of Korriban to the forest floor of Kashyyyk. The only criteria for them to flourish was a strong presence of the dark side in their habitat. When the dark side weakened, they could hibernate for years until the dark side had grown once more, at which point they emerged from the hibernation to eat more Jedi, who, by the way, were their preferred source of food. You see, Terentatek fed by drinking the blood of Force sensitives. They had a particular appetite for Jedi due to how pure they must have tasted to a dark side abomination, if we had to hazard a guess. Just because they like to eat Force sensitives didn't mean they didn't kill non-Force sensitives, however, and the Wookiees of Kashyyyk knew this very well. Thanks to the powerful dark side nexus left behind by the Rakata in the dark heart of Kashyyyk, the local flora and fauna both grew twisted and out of control. One of the beasts that found a home there were the Terentatek, who fit right in with the other nightmares in Kashyyyk's depths. Although the Wookiees avoided the Shadowlands as a general rule, during their coming-of-age ritual known as the Heartake, they descended to the forest floor to hunt. Of all the creatures they could choose to take down, the Terentatek was the most dangerous of them all, so much so that even fully grown Wookiee chieftains usually failed. Given how powerful Wookiees were compared to other humanoids, that should give you an idea of just how dangerous these Sithspawn could be. Unfortunately, we don't know much more about their biology, probably because most people who came across one didn't live to tell the tale. What we do know more about is the history of how these nightmares came to be. The first iteration of the Terentatek was born somewhere you probably wouldn't expect, given how much we've spoken about Sith alchemy. Tython, the ancient homeworld of the Jedi. Tens of thousands of years ago, in 25,805 BBY, the Jedi were still in their infancy. Back then, they were still known as the Jedi Order, operating out of the Jedi Temple on Tython. At the time, the Despot War had broken out. This was a war within the Tython system, when the Despot Queen Hadiyah, ruler of Shakikwa, tried to unite the crime lords and aristocrats of her homeworld. The Jedi, sensing that the system's stability was in jeopardy, vowed to stop her, and war broke out. During the war, Jedi Master Quanjiang tried to create a creature that was able to sense explosives. This was of course to aid the Jedi in taking down the Despot Queen and protecting more civilians, as the casualties were extremely high. To accomplish this, he used alchemy to create the Terenta, a bipedal creature that looked like a distant relative of the Rancor. However, they eventually developed a taste for Force-sensitive meat and turned on their Jedi masters. When the Order realized things were getting out of hand, they rehomed the Terenta to Tython's moon, Bogan, where they could stalk each other instead of their students. After that fiasco, the Terentatek fell off history's radar for over 20,000 years. Much later, in 4904 BBY, a Terentatek was spotted on the rainy forest world of Dromund Kars, the later capital world of the true Sith Empire. By then, the Terenta had been forgotten, and the link between the ancient beasts and this more modern menace was lost to time. It's unclear how the Terentatek came to be on Dromund Kars, or in existence at all. Some sources state they evolved on Korriban, where the powerful dark side influence slowly warped the minds and bodies of Rancors over time. Other sources attribute their creation to the Sith Lord Exar Kun, who allegedly created them with the help of Sith alchemy. During the Great Sith War, Exar Kun unleashed his alchemically enhanced children on Jedi outposts on Tatooine, Kashyyyk, and Tython. They understood the assignment and were so good at it that the Sith affectionately dubbed them Jedi Killers. After the war was over and Exar Kun had been defeated, the Jedi realized they couldn't very well leave his creations to roam freely across the galaxy. The Terentatek, alongside Kun's other creations like the Cylon, had to be destroyed. Thus, they set off on a series of great hunts. Each time, the Jedi undertook a painstaking hunt through the galaxy to find these Sithspawn and exterminate them, but they never fully succeeded. As we mentioned earlier, the Terentatek were active when the dark side was strong, and dormant when it was weak. After the Great Sith War had ended and the Sith waned once more, many Terentatek went into hibernation on places like Korriban and Tatooine, which led to the Jedi missing them during their Sithspawn purges. Despite the Jedi's best efforts, the Terentatek had well and truly spread across the galaxy, lying in wait for the next time the Sith would rise again. And they did. In many instances, such as the rise of Darth Revan and Darth Malak, or the rise of Emperor Palpatine, the Terentatek reared their ugly heads and did what they did best: eat Jedi. That's it for this mysterious but terrifying beast. We hope you enjoyed hearing about the Terentatek. Are there any other Sith abominations you want to hear about? Feel free to let us know in the comment section below.